To agenda item 9, our museum flooding and spruce wash updates. Mr. Beckett. And team. And just so everyone knows, after this, we will take a bit of a break before moving on to the pipeline fire flooding issue. So.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the time again to come to you and give you an update on where we are with museum, with all the things moving in this day and age. Museum is still a top priority for us, and we're still pushing forward on all the mitigation efforts to ensure that as many people are as protected as possible moving into this monsoon season, which has already started, and we'll hit that here in just a moment. As we go through today's agenda, we have a lot of new items on here. You all see that we have some educational pieces that are going to be in here today. We have our monsoon forecast from Brian Konowski with the Weather Service, and we also have our normal updates that we're going to have that we've previously given, and just to tell you where we are, how close we are on some of these projects as we move into our monsoon season. And we're a little bit early, so I'm hoping Brian is on with us. If not, I'll have to shoot him a quick text. But he'll give us our monsoon update. Let's see if he joins us here. Okay. Yeah, my apologies for that. So we'll get caught up here in just a second. But with that said, we can give you a quick update, and I'll hit on the agenda item real quick. Most importantly that you'll see on here is the emergency management overview. So what we're looking for today is to really, before you all go into your spring or your summer sessions here, we want to make sure that we give you a good update of expectations that we have and the questions that we might be coming to you with this summer if we were to see an event. And we want to talk about what the integration is of council, or we call the policy level decision makers, into the incident management team, and what that integration looks like moving forward. So that's going to be a really key piece. Our fire chief's going to lead that effort. He's truly an expert in this world and understanding how that process works and how that integration should happen, as well as Stacy Breckler-Nags, who's going to support that. So we're really looking forward to that piece of it today, and that will take a fair amount of time. And that'll come right after our monsoon update. However, if Brian's running a little bit late, we might jump ahead on the agenda, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay,
please.
And we'll do that. So we'll start with the emergency management updates, and we'll push forward, and we'll come back to our monsoon forecast for this season. Oh, there he is, just in time. Sorry, Brian, I apologize to do this to you, but I do thank you for jumping on quickly, and we have just got to that point in the agenda where we have your presentation up and ready.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, the National Weather Service, as most people know, our mission is to serve as the authoritative source of weather data, forecasts, and warnings for the protection of lives and property over northern Arizona. We have about 22 dedicated professionals out there in Belmont in our office. We're in the office. We have at least 2 or 3 meteorologists on staff 24/7. Always watching the weather, always seeing how we can help and how we can serve. We really do have a great history at the Weather Service and Flagstaff of working closely with the city and county in providing those critical forecasts, alerts, outlook to the community. Just the actions which occurred this past weekend were a great example of that. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, the 2022 monsoon season began early, about 2 weeks early. So it's great to see the rainfall, but it comes with a price, and that was the flooding that we saw. So we're seeing a change. with the rapidly diminishing fire risk that we're very thankful for, evolving into the traditional monsoon threats of daily storms, locally heavy rain is a threat, and flooding. What you see here in the picture is just the rainfall totals through yesterday, showing the 1 to almost 2 inches in the northern part of the city. The rest of the city about a ½ inch to an inch. This is well ahead of normal. In June, we average about 1 to 2/10 on average. So we're way ahead of normal with how the monsoon has started this year. Next slide, please. So where are we headed the next couple weeks? We're going to see that typical ebb and flow of the monsoon over the next month. The next couple days are going to be wetter. Tomorrow and Thursday, we should see widespread rain across the area, and of course, an enhanced threat of flood over the burn scars. We're going to roll into a drier period late in the weekend and into next week, and then it's going to turn around again as we see that it does. But overall, next slide, please. Where we're headed is that the monsoon as a whole is leaning toward an above normal monsoon if we take the July through September period. With this will be the enhanced threat of flooding with the typical monsoon storms that we see over our burn scars. And we look forward to working with the city, look forward to working with the county in alerting the public for any flood situations that do arise. Thank you. I believe that's my last slide.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions at this time regarding monsoon season? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. So please proceed.
All right, thank you, Mayor, appreciate that. And thank you, Brian. Our partnership with the Weather Service has been not just a seasonal disaster one, but all seasons, if you will. Winter is vital for us, so huge thank you to the National Weather Service and everything you all do. With that, I will hand it over to, sorry about that, Brian. I'll hand it over to Chief Galliard to kick us off for the next piece.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a bit of a rapid fire delivery on emergency management, particularly hopefully address questions and or concerns. What is the mayor and or council member's role in these types of emergencies? So hopefully we'll give you a little bit more information. I'll tell you that with respect to the emergency management function, your budget that you have adopted for next year has got some very important enhancements for emergency management at the City of Flagstaff. There is a grants administrator that in our world is also very, very tied to the recovery effort and emergency management, and we'll go over some of those concepts, but recovery is a big piece of that. How do we restore the community post-disaster to the new normal and the restoration of not only municipal services, but quality of life in that community? And so the addition of that position, and I'm really excited also under the leadership of Stacy BK, we will also be putting in the community's first full-time emergency manager. It is amazing news. It is I won't quantify it with a description, but it's time, and very excited about that capability coming to the City of Flagstaff. As we kind of take a quick look, just a reminder, emergency management for us, you know, these disasters, they start locally. They typically are an event, and it could be multi-jurisdictional. It could be a single jurisdictional incident, but for instance, the conversations we're having about flooding are clearly multi-jurisdictional. Unincorporated, incorporated areas, and so we have a sense of the need to come together, and we need a framework to do that within emergency management. We'll talk a little bit about that. But as you see, we've got local response, and then we have the ability to reach out in our region, the greater Flagstaff region. Examples of that, and you all have supported the creation of automatic aid agreements. Our Public Works Division has agreements with other governmental public works entities. I know that most of our departments have peer-like arrangements made with their counterparts in either other municipalities or county government and so forth. So that's the first place that that aid comes. We also have a state response, and then we have the ability to request assistance from other states. And some of you have been on council, and you may have approved the EMAC compact that gave us the ability to share resources across state lines. And then certainly the federal response, and we've always, you've heard that in your interactions where you have approved a declaration of emergency. Many times those declarations are to address the lack of resources, but they are also to begin the process of accessing federal funds that can be used on a local level to begin the recovery. And so it's very integrated. It goes, it's very upwards. In our particular case, we go to the county, and our first stop is to request assistance and declare emergencies to the county, and it's by design a larger national system. Just a kind of a reminder, so much of this, I've been doing a little bit of this. When I became emergency manager, was probably in 1986, and we didn't call them then, we called them civil defense directors. And I had a whole closet full of pamphlets to teach you how to build a backyard bomb shelter. But that evolved to emergency management, certainly post 9/11. We saw Homeland Security and the role into that, and quite honestly, the beginning of a lot of interagency, interdisciplinary cooperation that prior to September 11, 2001 simply did not exist. And so we have a lot of improvements that have been made in that landscape, but the primary authority given to the city council and the mayor is clearly defined in state statute and then almost replicated word for word in city code. And it's been that same, roughly same language, and I'll say since at least 1986, because that's when I first read it. So that's where your authority comes from, that kind of defines the responsibilities. If we take a look at the elements of emergency management, this is a classic view of preparedness, response, mitigation, and recovery. And it's just really super important to know that you're in that business every day of the year. And so in the context of emergency response, you have a police department, a fire department, a care unit that goes out and tries to address these issues every day. With respect to the preparedness elements, you may have been involved in adopting a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation program, I should say. And so you're in that business all the time. Sometimes it feels like in the time of a disaster that it's all new. And it can, because it can be rapidly unfolding. But I just wanted to show this example here that your team, your city team Flagstaff is involved in every aspect of this all the time. And this actually should be updated. Our pros division clearly a part of that effort as well. But I just wanted to kind of bring context to the continuum of emergency management. It is not just when there is water running through our streets or smoke in the air impacting us and giving us concerns about where that might go. So in the framework of how these emergencies are, how they are managed, I think one of the great things that came out, one of the findings of September 11, 2001 was there was no common national framework for incident management. And in the aftermath of that, we now have the National Incident Management System, Nims, you may have heard it called. And so this system is the incident command system. It provides us with a common vocabulary, nomenclature, so that as we talk up to the county government, to other governments outside our region, we've got a common framework so that we have better communication about what our needs are, and or how can we help you meet your needs. Resources are typed, and the integrated incident command system where we have a sense of how that's structured and what it's called and what those functions are standardized at every level of government and are also standardized across not only private sector but governmental services as well. I'll show you a little bit about some of the components of that. When you take a look at the who does what slide here, what you're looking at is essentially the element of the command and control of an EOC. It is also the same structure that's used, and many of my colleagues that I'm here with today are a part of the incident management team for the city of Flagstaff that is prepared and continuing to prepare for flood events in the community. They will use the same structure. Fires in the forest and in the city, same structure. And so we just wanted to give you a sense of this is the uniform standardized structure. You can see that there is an incident commander. You can see that there's an operations section. I'll distinguish a little bit of that in emergency operations centers, and particularly how it interacts with councils in just a moment. But the planning section, that piece that brings in information, develops objectives, and continues to create plans for the operational period for the incident and or event, is a big part of what keeps us on track. Logistics, resources are huge in the context of, if you can imagine, I think there might be difficult getting a hold of a Jersey barrier in northern Arizona right now. Sandbags, we were in meetings, and so that coordination of resources to acquire what is needed based on the type of emergency, that's a logistical function. And then certainly finance and administration. Local governments, by definition, have constraints associated with the amount of revenues that are available and budgets available. And the finance section, it helps us keep track of costs associated with responding. And they also provide vital information that helps us support getting recovery from the federal government and higher levels of government. And so this structure is very consistently applied, whether it's in an incident command post at a single jurisdiction fire, whether it's a multi-jurisdictional incident management team in place, or whether it's a city, a county, or a joint city-county emergency operations center. That's the structure that you should anticipate seeing. So the role of the elected officials, and we have some differences under a declaration of emergency versus not in a declaration of emergency. If we don't have a declaration of emergency, the council somewhat functions the way you do now. Business meetings, posted proper public meetings, decision-making as the body. Under a declaration, we see the mayor to expedite decision-making and expedite the governance is given special powers, and you see that here in this slide here, the ability to declare emergencies. During the emergency by proclamation, you see a list, and those are very traditional, been in statute for quite some time now. The city council, you see those responsibilities, I'll draw your attention to. During war, suspend procurement. That's how old some of this language is. It is literally Cold War era language that lives continuing in our state statutes. So I just wanted to give you a sense of those are the mayor and city council roles during an actual declaration. And what I really want to call your attention to, the policy group. And so if your professional emergency managers need guidance from you, then you will be asked to come together in a policy group, and it will be the body. I know even though during the COVID, I know that even though we had a declaration and we had a mayor that was acting underneath her mayoral powers, that mayor chose to engage the council for many of the policy discussions that took place. And so This policy group will get together and establish policy, mission, strategic direction, and authority in the event there is not clarity. I will tell you that most of the emergency managers behind me have clarity. We have a clear mission. We understand what our role is. But every now and then, we need to consult with the policymakers. One of the most important things that we can do is assist the public. And when we have an emergency or disaster in our community, one of the big deal items that we can do to protect our community is good information and direction about the emergency and or what is occurring and what they can do to be resilient during that emergency. So it's really one of the big partnerships that we can engage in is the collection of information, and we can ask city council members, each of you as a constituent body, and our role is and our desire is to provide you with timely, factual information at the right time, getting to the right people. And I'll just say that there are examples in the study of emergency management where communities got a little sideways and they gave out inconsistent messages or incorrect messages to the constituents of that jurisdiction. I've been on some phone calls with the mayor more than once about, can I say this out loud? And you know, those are great questions, and we welcome those questions because it's so vitally important to take care of our citizens that they get good information. And sometimes we can be very frustrating because we're still vetting it in something called the Joint Information Center. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works. But once we have that message, and the assistance of the elected officials in helping us get that message out is a great way to stay included and to make sure that we're getting the word out to our community members. And so, you know, our responsibility is to get you that information as fast as we can and to be very clear about what can be shared. And so sometimes that can be, as the mayor knows, I can be very frustrating, or we can be frustrating by, usually it's about timing. And so we know that is a big role for the mayor and council to help us do that and to get that information out. Here's a really interesting slide that kind of shows, you know, the importance of and all the work that goes into it during the tunnel fire and during our flood events. You're going to hear a JIC, a Joint Information Center, referenced often. For instance, on the tunnel fire, pipeline fire, multiple jurisdictions are all in. We've got the Forest Service. We have the IMT with their own public information office. We have the city with our own public information officer. We have the county. And so the Joint Information Center is that place where that information is all processed, and those that are in charge of the message, incident commander on the fire, they're very much tied into the important message that should go out. Just a clear example of that was during the tunnel fire, we were working in the Summit Fire Medical District. It was 12 minutes between the radio order and the go order. And so good information and information that is not needed at that time was just as important as good information. People needed that vital information in that moment. And so the JIC becomes extremely important for us to manage that and protect our community. And just another element of how these look, we all continue to have our own PIOs, but the work was done within the JIC. And I think that's the simple message there, that highly coordinated response takes place. In the event of an emergency operations center piece, this is one of the two really big deal items that the Emergency Operations Center is going to undertake. That public information piece to assist our citizens. And the other piece is the coordination and the attainment of resources. And sometimes that comes, once we've exhausted our local capability, we'll engage elected officials in the process of helping us identify resources through the Emergency Operations Center function. And so just, I think that's my last slide, and it is absolutely a crime that I ran through all that information that quickly. I will tell you that Stacy BK is working now with our counterparts at the County Emergency Management to try to schedule a time for, I believe it's about a half-day training session for executive leaders such as yourself, where we really spend a little time and do a deeper dive into the executive leader's role in disasters and emergencies. We will continue to try to get that scheduled. We hope you can participate. I think if you have concerns or questions, I think it will go a great ways towards giving you confidence with respect to your role during an emergency. Do you all have any questions for me?
Any questions at this time, Council?
Thank you.
I'll check online here. Oh, nope, nothing online, so Steve.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm the Volunteer and Event Coordinator for the Sustainability Division. Myself, Marissa Malloy, and Amy Hagan have been part of the volunteer group, part of this whole structure. And over the last month or so, we have hosted 4 different volunteer days in support of protecting the homes and community members in flood area. Starting off in May, we had a debris cleanup to help prevent potential flooding in some areas. And then June 4th, June 18th, and this past Saturday, June 25th, we had sandbagging events where we were going out with volunteers, placing sandbags around homes and protecting those communities. And over the course of all 4 events, we have had over 200 volunteers, accumulating almost 900 hours of volunteer service time, which is really impressive. And over that time, we have been able to help around 35 individual homes and setting them up for success for the oncoming monsoons. And we do have one final volunteer day coming up on July 9th, and we encourage everyone to register in advance for that. The more hands for these events, the better. As you can see from this slide, this image, having a lot of volunteers, a lot of hands, makes for light work. So I want to thank everyone who's come out and volunteered for these events and encourage others to join us as well. Any questions?
Not seeing any this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brandy Suda, City's Finance Director. So just a brief update on our museum flooding financial focus group. So we have continued to meet regularly to discuss the financial resource needs for both pre-monsoon activity and flood response activities. Regarding our pre-monsoon activities, we have identified up to $400,000 in preparatory cost needs. This includes costs such as and related to our volunteer events, sandbag mitigation efforts, as well as the Siren system. The Stormwater Fund is the greatest impacted fund by these costs. Related to flood response activities, which includes and is related to potential action and costs during a flood event or events this summer. We have identified between $426,000 and a recent updated estimate of just over $1 million in costs. These estimates do not include any damage cost or repairs due to flooding, but include costs related to street cleanup, debris removal, and sandbag efforts. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions at this time.
Okay,
Thank you.
and I turn it over to Sam.
All right, thank you, Brandy. And yes, she did remove my P card, so we're trying to figure that out at this point. With that, we also want to note some of the funding we found outside of our internal funding, which was the Department of Fire and Forestry Management funding. Many of the items that we've purchased, we've removed from this list as we've updated and they've come in. Many of them are being used to date. The picture here in the bottom corner is one that we took off the internet. However, our sandbagger did show up today. So very exciting news there. It will be up and running tomorrow. So very good news there. In addition to that, you'll see in green, we have added to some of our requests. With the addition of a new fire comes new impacts. Those impacts are requiring some financial assistance, and DFFM does qualify, or these impacts do qualify for their funding. So we're going to be asking for additional items through there, and as we get more, we'll update you, and we'll keep that separate between the two different events. Yep, I see Christine on, and I'll hand it over to her.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm Christine Cameron, Project Manager with City Capital Improvements. So the large concrete box culvert across Dorotha is complete, along with the inlet and the outlet structures for the box. And the Shotcrete Channel improvements from Cedar to Dorotha are also complete. So the primary drainage improvements are now wrapping up for the project, and we are ready to take water. We've seen some water come through, and everything is operating fine. Tiffany Construction will be completing the surface improvements on Dorotha Avenue over the next month. This includes concrete sidewalk, curb and gutter, asphalt street surface, in addition to reinstalling some private improvements that were disturbed, like fencing and parking areas. And the barriers on Dorotha are anticipated to stay in place until the project is fully complete. So we hope to open the street back up soon when we are closed out. So I will turn it back over to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. And I don't know if anybody realizes the amount of effort and time that it took to get that project done in such a short period of time, or to the point it's at. But a huge thank you to Christine and everybody who supported that. Quick update on Ponderosa, and this will be the last update for Ponderosa Park. And if any of you have been out there, you probably have seen the landscape has changed dramatically. It wasn't something that we're proud of, it's just what had to happen for the safety of not only the residents in the area and the children, but to reduce the additional impacts to the Killip detention basin. So right now the park is, in a sense, just a dirt field, and it is prepped and ready for whatever flows may come through there this year that will wind up in the Killip detention basins. New barrier has been placed in that park to ensure a little extra protection and guidance for that water as it comes through, to funnel it into the inlet for the Killip structures, to make sure that we don't tear up anything else in that area and that it all works properly. From here, I don't know if we have Lucinda Andriani on with us. I know that she had county presentations tonight for the flood control district, and perfect, no worries. So just a quick update on these. Their projects up on Forest and within Mount Eldon Estates have come to an end. I drove up there earlier this week, and the Mount Eldon Estates project, it is ready for whatever impacts it may or may not see. The On Forest project, I will have to get the final confirmation on that. However, they were at the very end of that project. I believe it is completed, but I'll have to confirm that just to make sure that we're all clear on that. These are two very, very key projects for sediment reduction and for stabilization of that channel to ensure that hopefully we reduce impacts further down into the city jurisdiction with these. So truly a great partnership and great work completed here. With that, I'll hand it over to Sarah, probably our most important piece.
Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Sarah Langley, Public Affairs Director. Brief overview of the communications efforts that we've done in the past month of June. As Stephen mentioned, the hard work continues on the volunteer days, so big thanks to our friends in sustainability pros and public works for making that a success. As you can see, we've been communicating on those. We also put out a communications piece to let residents know that the flood risk remains very, very real. We heard a few things floating around that, oh, there's been a lot of work on infrastructure projects and a lot of things, so maybe we don't need sandbags anymore. That's absolutely not the case. You definitely need to keep your sandbags in place. The threat of flooding remains really real. The infrastructure projects will help, but they will not solve everything. So very important to stay alert during this monsoon season and keep all of your emergency mitigations in place. We also, another big thing we did was successful testing of the Siren systems. So big thanks to the county emergency management team and our public works team on the city side. Some of you came out for that, so thanks for making that. We got some great feedback from residents. I know emergency management did adjust the volume a little bit after that, so some kind of fine tuning taking place there. Also key with the Siren systems is to note that that is a supplementary or complementary noticing system. It's still very important to sign up for emergency alerts from the county, and those are those text messages that you'll receive. Looking forward, we have, of course, one last volunteer event, so we'll be messaging on that. And then we are also prepared to message in the event that we do get a flood event this year or multiple flood events. We'll be ready for those. So I believe that concludes staff's presentation. Mayor, I'll pass it back over to you for questions or public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to council, I'd like to take public participants. Don, if you'd like to come on up. Don Rodriguez.
I could have pushed the button. Mayor DC, Vice Mayor Sweet, Council, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. And thank you everyone for your efforts and everyone that came today in the audience. 6 new families have moved into our block this summer. Post information on social media about how they can get an on-site assessment. Send out another reminder about registering for alerts and include information on how the system works, because sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. In every neighborhood, there will be lots of people who are affected more than others. Start all efforts with those people. Many elderly do not know how to request help. There are still meetings being held without being posted on social media. Also, when there is any type of event like these, post the contact information for the person in charge that day. Last month, there was a major gas leak behind the house. Our street had various groups of different subcontractors and so many Unisource vehicles. There were police, ambulances, and fire. No one ever took the lead. Today, they had They had a crane, every sort of heavy machinery, but no road closed signs. This is a plea for help. We need traffic control desperately. Even though the street name changes from Grandview to Main, the water doesn't stop at Grandview. It keeps going. And Grandview has 2 road closed signs and Main has 0. During the floods, it would be fun to post a sign that says, open to pedestrian traffic, bring your own shovel. And ask Rotary Club, ROTC, or CERT volunteers for help with the traffic. Everyone. Places that have never flooded before are now flooding. Resources are limited. So all the help Rio de Flag residents have had in the past are not available to anyone anymore. Flood equity includes, by law, as we heard earlier, each homeowner is responsible for our property and the city is responsible for drains. We shouldn't count on the city to do everything for us. All roads should have trash racks over drains so that each neighborhood is held accountable for their own debris and it doesn't go downhill. Jersey barriers. Chief, how do you get more Jersey barriers? Use them wisely. They should only be used at homes where lives are in danger, like the corner of Linda Vista, at apartments or trailers with more than 2 units on a property, and at schools. Every neighborhood should deal with their own water load, and the city should never dam up areas like cul-de-sacs and divert water, extra water, at an increased flow rate into other neighborhoods. Neighbors, why are you blaming each other when entire neighborhoods are potentially underwater? Have been last year, right? I don't know about this year, because entire streets are still illegally closed off with jury barriers, like at Dortha. There is fencing there, so it's like double dipping. There's fencing on the other side too, but we know you just want to help and we love you for it, but it needs to be fair and it needs to be transparent. Like Chief said, let's just try to get better. We need strong leadership, continue to be brave and press forward. We have capable people, accept their help. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Do we have any one online?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Then with that, thank you, Don. Any questions from council? Clarifications, anything needed regarding the presentation? Councilman McCarthy.
Earlier tonight, we heard a comment from a member of the public that was noting that we have washes, drainage ditches that are full of debris, branches, walkers, I don't know what else, ice chests maybe. Anyway, the question is there any city program to make sure that these washes, the only purpose of which is to convey water away, are kept clean so that they can do their job? Because if they clog up, then they can't flow water. I think you get the gist of it.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll try to answer that as best as you can. So thank you, Mayor and Council. Ed Shank, Stormwater Manager. We do have a stormwater maintenance program here within the city that is delegated to cleaning about 26.2 miles of FEMA-recognized channels, as well as over 100 miles of small minor ditches, swales, depressions, et cetera, that we have mapped out and that are within city-owned parcels, city easement, city right-of-way. Now, I mention that because we are kind of restricted to city-owned parcels, city easements, city right-of-way. So if it is a private parcel or a private area that we do not have the right language to get into, it gets a little trickier on what we can maintain. The area that's mentioned, so near downtown, there are some areas there that are city-owned, city easement, city-maintained through one way or another, part of that 26.2 miles, especially within the Rio, obviously. Our maintenance program does have a budget, obviously. We do have 2 water service operators that are tasked for those 26 miles, and we do call upon our other divisions and sections as needed for help, because obviously 2 people is a little low for that stretch of area. For something like this, where we're talking about post-fire events, we can reach out for more resources. As the chief mentioned, we work through the incident management team. We are doing that for cleanup and for clean out for areas. It should be mentioned that it's very hard not to get, not only for barrier, it's not only hard to get barrier in northern Arizona right now, it's also very hard to get conservation crews and to get the resources that we are looking for. But we are working on that. We do have a work order system for cleaning out those ditches, for cleaning out those channels, and it should be also noted that there may, obviously there may be implications to drainage if you have some debris within the channel, but for some of the stuff that we're talking about for museum fire and shortly for pipeline fire, we're talking about a considerable amount of water. So for both fire areas and burn scars, we're talking about several magnitudes, I shouldn't say magnitudes, several times higher amount of flow that we're expecting to see off these watersheds. So a lot of the issues we've talked about through museum fire and that we will be talking about through the pipeline fire in the next conversation are really due to a huge amount of new water that we're going to see due to those compromised watersheds. So a lot of the flooding that we are talking about are really talking about a volume of water that's much larger than before and a peak flow, so that wave, if you will. It's not really a wave, but the high amount that you're going to see for that first flush that caused the flooding. So the debris, vegetation, et cetera, that does have an impact, but that's not really the cause of a lot of this flooding. The cause is a high rainfall event, and also a compromised watershed. Did that answer the question, or I can go into more detail?
Well, I think so. I mean, you're saying that we're having these very unusual water events because we have a compromised forest. That makes it even more important than ever before to keep these channels open. So, you know, apparently you are tasked to do this. I'm just encouraging the city to make sure that we do it. And as far as, you know, if it's on private property, I guess in some cases it's still a conveyance of, it's a stream bed in effect. We need to address that somehow. I mean, it's maybe work with the property owners, or I would think this is important enough that we could be a little more assertive about it if we need to be. So that's kind of where I'm at on this. Anyway, thank you for the update. I think you basically answered it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate all the hard work. I mean, this has been a Herculean effort to be able to get the Dorthla Inlet completed, and seeing all the progress since last monsoon season. It's just amazing. And I know we got a lot more Herculean tasks ahead to make sure that our community is safe and feels safe. And I just really am very appreciative of Team Flag staff and all of our partners associated to getting these projects completed and underway. So thank you. With that, it is 5:20, and I would like to take a 15-minute break. So 5:33, we can start back up. All right, let's get started back up here again.